Chapter 107. Thud. Another one fell. The blood drained from the faces of the Jongnam Sect's disciples as they stood in shock. 6. 6 had fallen. A total of 6. 6 second-class disciples from the Jongnam Sect had been defeated by a single third-class disciple. It was an utterly one-sided defeat as well. But it wasn't the current losses that left them terrified. What truly scared them was the creeping realization that they may not be able to secure even a single victory in this match. Will we be completely annihilated by just one third-class disciple? Their fingers turned numb, and a cold sweat ran down their spine. Their eyes clouded over in despair, and their legs lost strength. Was there anyone here that didn't understand how disgraceful this was? This event was 1 in 1,000. If such news leaked, it would travel the world before the disciples could even return home. For Mount Hua, this would be a glorious achievement, and for the Jongnam Sect, this would be a humiliation that would last for generations. That historically absurd disgrace was occurring right here and now on Mount Hua. Realizing that, the Jongnam Sect disciples felt a sense of fear that went beyond this moment's pressure. Next, in their ears echoed the most terrifyingly heartless voice. No one stepped forward. They weren't stupid. If it happened once or twice, it would be considered luck. But winning 6 times in a row was no coincidence. It was unbelievable, but Mount Hua's third-class disciple, Cheongmyeong, was stronger than them. Overwhelmingly. They were no longer afraid of stepping forward and losing. However, the burden of being one of the disciples that contributed to this catastrophic defeat was terrifying beyond measures. Someone go. I can't. Sayoung, shouldn't Sayoung go? What am I supposed to do? It was at that moment. Pathetic. Jinggeomryung spoke in a cold voice. The disciples of the great Jongnam Sect are afraid of a child that's 10 years younger than them. You all seem to have forgotten about shame. Everyone was unable to respond and merely bowed their heads. Jinggeomryung took a step forward. I will go. Sayoung! I cannot watch that arrogant bastard any longer. So watch me as I regain the sect's honor. Although I don't know if there is any honor left to reclaim. Jinggeomryung's face twisted like a ravenous demon. But someone spoke just as he was about to walk out. Stop! Jinggeomryung turned to see that Sama-seung was looking at him with a stiff face as he called on someone else. Manjok. Yes, elder. You go. Sama-seung cut the disciples' words off as if to preempt and nip any excuses in the bud. Go out there and drag him down by the ankles. Do you understand what I mean? Yes. Jinggeomryung tried to disagree, but Sama-seung stopped him. Come here. But the fight is... That's enough. Come here. Sama-seung led Jinggeomryung to the back. After reaching an isolated place where no one could hear them, Sama-seung spoke in a low voice. Do you think the other kids can win? Jinggeomryung couldn't answer. It was a question with an obvious answer. However, the reason he couldn't respond wasn't that he felt sorry for his juniors. It was because he couldn't understand the reality of what was happening. Nothing was lacking about the second-class disciples' skills, yet they lacked confidence despite their efforts. They no longer had any chance against Cheongmyeong with such a mindset. Sama-seung spoke bluntly to the confused Jinggeomryung. Your thoughts aren't wrong. Yes? That's a monster. No, I would call him a monster cub, but if you leave him alone, he will become a real monster one day. Elder, and that monster will block the Jongnam Sect's path again. Do you understand what I mean? Jinggeomryung's eyes went wide. Is that possible? Jinggeomryung had to admit that Cheongmyeong is incredibly strong for his age, but could he really become a hindrance to their sect? Saying that Cheongmyeong would block the sect's path was the same as saying that Jinggeomryung would be unable to handle him. Whether it's true or not, at least Sama-seung thought so. His blood boiled inside. Does that mean I can barely handle that child? This was an insult he'd never heard before. Jingomryung's expression revealed the anger that he couldn't hide. Sama-seung looked deeply into his eyes and spoke. Gumryung, you are a genius. But how many people do you think get called geniuses? It's not something I want to say, but there are at least 10 men of your caliber in your generation alone. Maybe it's even more than that. Jingomryung tightly clenched his teeth. Sama-seung coldly asked, do you believe that you can be the strongest in the world in the future? Jingomryung may be the most confident person in the world, but even he didn't dare to lightly answer that question. The title of strongest in the world held too much weight. When Jingomryung hesitated to answer, Sama-seung narrowed his eyes. Master, geniuses, this title may be enough to carry on the spirit of the Jongnam sect and lead our sect into a golden era. However, Sama-seung finally arrived at the main point he really wanted to say. Being the best in the world is impossible. Those who compete for the position of the strongest in the world are monsters, not geniuses. Only those who casually ignore common sense, crush down the laws with their power, and defy all reason with their talents can stand on that stage. Right? Sama-seung's head slowly turned towards the center. Monsters like him. Jingomryung's shoulder trembled. Elder, Jingomryung was about to cry out and protest when he was suppressed by the elder's cold voice. But it became difficult to breathe. He may be a monster, but he's still just a cub. Even a dog can bite a tiger to death if it's just a baby. Jingomryung understood the meaning behind Sama-seung's words and stared at him in shock. As if to affirm Jingomryung's startling thoughts, a quiet and eerie voice penetrated his ears. Kill him. Elder, Sama-seung whispered with a ghastly visage. It's still possible. He is a monster, but he can be dealt with now. You must kill him. If you don't kill him now, we will never get another chance in this lifetime. Don't forget, people with talent don't become the best. Among those called geniuses and prodigies, only one person can truly stand at the peak. Do it now. If you can't kill him, at least cut off his arm. Jingomryung unknowingly stepped back. He's lost his mind. It wasn't because of what was said, but a certain sense of madness was glowing in his eyes. Whatever it was, it didn't seem normal. Elder, think rationally. Rational? Sama-seung burst into laughter before grinding his teeth. Are you going to live in his shadow for the rest of your life? Jingomryung shut his mouth. Under the shadow of that child. Jingomryung clenched his fist. His nails digging into the palm of his hand nearly punctured the flesh. It was such a humiliating thought that he couldn't bear it. The choice is yours, Sama-seung said while growling. You don't need to take all the responsibility for this. You just made a mistake. Mistakes are common in spars like this, don't you think so? Jingomryung looked at Sama-seung with fire raging within his eyes and spoke. First of all, let me be clear. I am not someone who can be overshadowed by a child like him. Despite those bold words, Sama-seung waited for Jingomryung to continue. But he continued with a cold face. If that child's existence will become an obstacle for the Jongnam sect, then there's no reason to follow the rules. A sinister smile blossomed on Sama-seung's lips. That's right. Thud. Another disciple fell. With this, 8 have fallen to Chongmyung. Chongmyung lowered his sword and looked at the Jongnam sect. There were only 2 left, and he arrogantly stared at his remaining foes. Not yet. It is too early for despair. There was something else Chongmyung had prepared. It doesn't look like I'm getting to 10 wins so easily. Of course, Jingomryung would appear in the end, but it's difficult for them to find someone to fill the final role. Who was going to come forward when they were all terrified? It's unfortunate. Do I need to be content with my current win record? It was then. Step. A man steadily walked out without saying a word. Chongmyung seemed shocked upon seeing who it was that approached the stage. Why? The person approaching smiled modestly. I know it's too early for me to compete with you, but our sect is suffering a great humiliation, so I can't just sit on the sidelines and watch from behind. Chongmyung nodded his head. This guy was surely worth it. Lee Songbek, who he had already met at the Eunha Guild, came to face Chongmyung. The Jongnam Sect's Lee Songbek, a second-class disciple, asks disciple Chongmyung for a match. Mount Hwa's third-class disciple, Chongmyung, accepts. The two stood facing one another with swords drawn. What do I do? Chongmyung looked at Lee Songbek. Even though he was from the Jongnam sect, Chongmyung didn't hate him. But Chongmyung lowered his sword after much consideration and gently closed his eyes. It wouldn't hurt to show him. If he could accept and overcome it, then it would be medicinal. If he could not overcome this, it would be poison. It would all depend on Lee Songbek. Ta! Lee Songbek screamed as he charged. Chongmyung's sword also began to move slowly. Lee Songbek was someone that would grow by using the old methods of the Jongnam sect. The current Chongmyung could show him where to begin. But a little should be enough for Lee Songbek. The tip of Chongmyung's sword was aimed precisely at Lee Songbek. And at that moment, Lee Songbek, who was running towards Chongmyung, opened his eyes wide. The sword! Chongmyung's entire body was covered by the sword. No, the sword that stabbed towards Lee Songbek grew so large that it obscured his view of Chongmyung. No, that's not it either. Not visible. Not being able to feel it. The only thing he could see and feel was the sword aimed at him. Is that true unity with the sword? A huge shock swept through Lee Songbek's body before he could fully comprehend what was happening. Thud. As blood dripped down, Lee Songbek stepped back and subtly smiled. I saw it. Thud. Lee Songbek fell to the floor. 9 consecutive losses. Now there was only one left. Chongmyung turned to look at the Jongnam Sect's disciples. No, his gaze was aimed at just one person. Come out, Jingomryung. It's finally time to pay for your sins, Jongnam Sect.